1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, one of the most astounding and arresting verses that you'll find. And without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the Spirit, seen by angels, preached among the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and received up in glory. Right in the middle of instruction on how to act in a church, and he goes back to the story of Christmas. God was manifest in the flesh, and through these next clauses, he describes all that it means at Christmas and why it was important for them at the church at that time. In fact, this letter was all about the verses preceding this, in verses 14 and 15, as we read those. These things I write to you, in verse 14, Paul says, though I hope to come to you shortly. But if I am delayed, I write that you may know how you ought to conduct yourself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of truth. So what he wanted them to know is how to conduct themselves in the house of God, how to choose pastors and elders, the roles of men and women, how to live godly. And right in the midst of his teaching, he says, and oh, by the way, don't forget Christmas, because that's the only way you'll make it. When Paul wrote to Timothy this letter in his encouragement not to forget Christmas, this was a well-organized church. Timothy was preaching in Ephesus, which was a great metropolis, who had one of the 7 wonders of the world in the city. The temple of Artemis, or of Diana, the great temple that brought many tourists into town and much money. In fact, Paul and them were run out of town there when they were evangelizing because they were afraid that Paul and them would put many out of business with the gospel. Paul preached there, Apollos preached there, Aquila and Priscilla preached there, Timothy preached there. Sounds like an all-star cast in Ephesus. In fact, Paul's letter to the Ephesians is one of the greatest letters in the New Testament. Less than 50 years later, we find out in the book of Revelation, God says, I'm taking my candlestick from you because you've left your first love. It didn't matter how well they were started or how well they were organized. If you're going to conduct yourself right in the church of God, you have to remember how it all started. You have to remember Christmas.